Mr. Eccleston, season's greetings. Thanks for having us around. You always produce a Christmas card. Is it fair to say Nico Rosberg's off your Christmas card list?
No, well and truly on it. I was, I suppose, just as surprised as everybody else. But I think it made up his mind a little bit longer than people believe. He was going to. I mean, his idea and his ambition was to win the World Championship. That's what he's done. So if he wins it again, he's won it twice or three. So what? He is world champion, which is really what he wanted.
It's going to be, hopefully, someone strong in the car opposite Lewis Hamilton next season. How key an appointment is that from your perspective?
I think nobody would want to buy tickets and go to watch a race or watch on television Lewis disappearing from when the lights go off, and probably lapping the field a couple of times. So I think it would be bad for everybody, and bad for Lewis as well, because I think he wants to win fair and wants to beat somebody.
Have you in any way encouraged Mercedes to go after Fernando Alonso or Sebastian Vettel? Would you have liked to have made that happen?
Well, I mean, there's no good encouraging people because both those guys are under contract. Whether or not they've said that they couldn't have Fernando because he's a bit of tanglement with McLaren and with him at the time, so it would be wrong to have him. So I don't think they didn't try with him. But Sebastian, I think, is with Ferrari. He's happy with Ferrari, and certainly wouldn't break his contract.
Of the drivers that could go there, is Valtteri Bottas your favourite appointment?
Well, I think maybe there's one or two of them would be capable of performing. Whether, I don't think anybody's going to beat Lewis.
Is there a possible conflict of interest because Toto Wolff is still involved in Valtteri Bottas's management?
Well, I don't think Lewis would care unless it was painfully obvious that they were doing something which would help Bottas against him. But Toto's position, yeah, he's got him under contract, and I suppose he's got a much better chance, Bottas, of getting a drive than somebody that hasn't got a contract with Toto.
Christian Horner has said Mercedes are clear favourites again. Could you not have done more to proof the rules against Mercedes? Could anything more have been done?
Well, the problem is that recently we've been operating in a democracy, which, as you know, I don't think always is the right way to go with anything. And therefore, you need whoever competed to agree. And the voting procedure is such that as Mercedes supply 4 other team engines, when it comes to voting, they've got a few votes in their pocket before they start. So really, the way we're constructed in that area is wrong.
And yet, I've heard how useful it would be for someone like Ross Brawn, a single engineer, to come in and define a set of rules which might bring more competitive racing.
We have to be careful with those things. I'm not suggesting Ross would do anything that isn't completely compliance, but it's not easy.
Is there a role for him on your side of the business, if I could put it in those terms?
No.
And have you discussed that matter with the incoming owners,
No.
with the likes of Chase Carey?
No.
So would that be a point of contention if they were of the opinion that they would want him? Would that be a problem for you?
Well, when they've got control of the company, which should be in February, they can do what they like.
Some people have cast doubt on whether this takeover will actually happen. Do you see it as an inevitability that it will go through in February?
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I mean, the only way it would never go through is if the European Commission or somebody like that said there was a massive conflict or there was a complaint from one of the countries.
So they have the money?
I don't imagine there's any problems.
So they have the funds in place then?
I've never counted their money.
No. And yet I come back to this point, once they do have the control, they would have voting rights which would enable them to do what they want.
Absolutely.
Have you had any sense that they have an agenda which you are not in favour of, which might cause you to perhaps walk away from this business? So your relations with Chase Carey, for example, have been wholly positive thus far?
Yeah, no. He's finding out an awful lot about Formula One and the business as well.
They've talked about increasing the number of races to 25. Do you think that's still achievable, given some of the team's misgivings about 21 this year?
Well, we couldn't do it at the moment because the contract we have with the teams would prohibit us from doing that. In 2020, we don't have any agreements with the teams. The Concord Agreement as such is no longer in existence. So it depends how we negotiate with the teams.
2020 is some way off yet, and yet Max Mosley, who I spoke to some weeks ago, he was quite confident that you would still be in charge then. Do you feel you might still be? Or do you still have the appetite?
Idea. I mean, I'm happy to do what I've always been doing.
So in no sense do you see an end in sight for you?
I'm happy. If the people that have bought the shares are not happy with me, well then I'll move.
In terms of the way the world is run, you know Vladimir Putin very well. You seem quite uniquely positioned to perhaps gauge how that relationship might develop between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump.
Well, I spoke to Mr. Putin earlier in the year when I thought for sure Donald would get in. And I said to him, the minute he gets in, he'll come and put his arms around you because he needs somebody strong, as Mr. Putin is. It would be a good alliance. You know, those two could do good things for the world.
Is Mr. Putin, given his long experience in international affairs, better equipped than Mr. Trump, if one of them were seeking to gain an edge over the other?
Well, I don't think they'd be looking to get an edge over. You know, the difference is with Mr. Putin, he's been successful in all the things he's done. You know, when they got involved with Syria, I said he will sort the problems out. The Americans talked about it. What they would like to do, possibly, or maybe they would like to do it, or they could, but maybe they should, but they've got to think about it. Mr. Putin doesn't. I'd sort of liken him to a surgeon, and if somebody had needed an arm or leg taken off, because if not they'd die otherwise, a good surgeon would do it. They wouldn't start thinking about and having a committee.
Let's get back to F1 then, and one other significant figure has had to take a back seat at McLaren this year, Ron Dennis. Do you now worry about that team at all?
McLaren's been Ron. That's what McLaren is. Forget the word McLaren, it's Ron Dennis. And he's the one that's sort of pioneered lots of things and carried them through properly. I mean, I know the reason, which I won't disclose, why he's not there. And probably if I'd have been the shareholders, the same thing would have happened.
There has been good news recently. France is back on the calendar for 2018. And what about Brazil, which has an asterisk against it? It's a place dear to your heart, and yet your own family has been the victim of quite a serious crime there this year. Did in any way, has that influenced your outlook on that Grand Prix? Because others in Formula One have also been victims of crime in that particular city. Do you have to take that into account when you're deciding?
I don't know who's been victims of crime.
Jenson Button.
Somebody asked for a hat, and he thought he was going to be murdered.
Yeah. But I mean, you had long talks with the president, but I'm just wondering whether that...
No, it's a financial issue.
Nothing more?
No, nothing more than that. Good circuit, good everything, it just is just financial.
Just find if we could be positive about 2017 overall. If the field were evened up...
Nobody's going to beat Lewis. When I say nobody, maybe Max in that car could sort of hurry Lewis along a little bit.
Will Max be a world champion, you think, in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, sure. Imagine? He gets in the right car, he will be. I mean, even where he is now, possibilities. You know, the problem is a simple one. The Mercedes team, engine, everything is perfect. Got the best driver in the world. I hope I'm completely wrong in my assessment of the championship with Lewis. I hope I am wrong. I hope whoever goes and sits in the same team can beat him, and will beat him, or hurry him up so that he makes mistakes. My personal opinion is I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. I think we all want that. A very Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Eccleston.
Thank you.
Thank you.